Man freed a German Shepherd chained for life. What happened next shocked everyone. Caleb was well known in his town as an expert in rehabilitating troubled dogs, especially German Shepherds. He had spent 15 years as a police dog handler and another 10 years working privately with aggressive and traumatized animals. When he received a call from the local animal control service, he was finishing up with another German Shepherd, helping it adjust to a new family. The voice of the officer sounded alarmed. They needed urgent help with a dog that had spent almost its entire life chained up. The story was sad, but unfortunately common. Benji, a dog confined to a private yard and chained to a doghouse by a heavy metal chain, was discovered by Caleb. Since Caleb's car was unavailable, a veterinarian from the local Animal Protection Society arrived to pick him up. While traveling, they discussed the situation, and despite Caleb's considerable expertise, it seemed daunting. The dog wasn't merely afraid of people, it had become a wild, uncontrollable creature poised to attack anyone who approached. Upon their arrival, Caleb immediately noticed the situation was worse than he'd been told. Benji, a large dog with matted fur, began barking ferociously at the sight of people. Even the seasoned handler paused for a moment. The dog lunged on its chain, baring its teeth and ready to attack anyone who came near. He hasn't let anyone near him for over a year, the owner explained from a safe distance. I just leave food and walk away. I tried to pet him once. He nearly bit my hand off. The last time I replaced the chain, I had to put sleeping pills in his food because there was no other way to get close. Caleb took some boiled meat from his bag, a method that usually worked with aggressive dogs. But Benji didn't even glance at the treat, continuing to bark and growl furiously. Only when everyone stepped back far enough did the dog quickly grab the food, all the while keeping his eyes fixed on the unwelcome visitors. Caleb tried speaking in different tones, from firm commands to gentle coaxing. But Benji reacted the same way to every sound, with explosive barking. Then Caleb noticed something. When he spoke in a soft, calm voice, the dog's ears twitched slightly as if trying to catch every word. Caleb's clothes carried the scent of other dogs. He had spent the whole day at the kennel. Benji paused briefly to sniff the air, but then erupted in an even more intense fit of rage. Every time Caleb tried to take even a small step toward the dog, Benji lunged forward, stretching the chain to its limit. The sound of the metal echoed across the yard, and it seemed either the chain would break or the dog would hurt itself in its frantic attempts to reach the handler. Caleb decided to try a different tactic. Slowly, he turned away from the dog, pretending to be interested in something else in the yard. The barking paused for a moment, replaced by a low growl. There was something new in the silence, almost like confusion. The next hour was spent trying to get closer to the dog. Caleb moved incredibly slowly, taking tiny steps. Sometimes he stopped for 15 or 20 minutes, allowing Benji to adjust to his presence at the new distance. The dog no longer barked constantly, but the growling didn't stop. Any movement of Caleb's hand toward the dog reignited a surge of aggression. Yet Caleb noticed that if he kept his hand low and moved it very slowly, Benji watched with less tension. There was a hint of curiosity in the dog's eyes, although it was still overwhelmed by fear and anger. At one point, even the experienced handler had a grim thought. Perhaps the dog was so deeply traumatized that euthanasia would be the only humane solution. But the idea was unbearable to someone who had dedicated his life to saving dogs. Caleb decided to try one last approach. He asked everyone to step back as far as possible and simply sat down on the ground a few steps from the doghouse. Time passed. The sun slowly began to set. Benji continued to growl, but his tone changed. It now carried hints of uncertainty and curiosity. Why wasn't this person leaving? Why wasn't he trying to get closer? What did he want? Another hour and a half went by. Dusk was settling in. Then something extraordinary happened. The dog stopped growling. Benji still watched every move Caleb made, but his posture became less tense. His tail, which had been tucked tightly under him, lowered slightly. The snarl faded, though his lips were still slightly curled, revealing his teeth. Very slowly, Caleb pulled out a special pole used for working with aggressive dogs. This was a critical moment. It was now or never. Any sudden movement could trigger another explosion of aggression. To everyone's surprise, Benji allowed Caleb to come close enough to release him from the chain. The dog's body was as taut as a bowstring, but he didn't try to attack. The moment the heavy chain finally fell to the ground, something remarkable happened. It was as if an invisible spring inside the dog unwound. Benji stood still, then cautiously took a step forward, free for the first time in years. When they moved him into the Animal Protection Society's van, no one could believe their eyes. Benji walked calmly without trying to bite or escape. And when Caleb chose to spend a few more hours with him instead of immediately sending him to the shelter, something miraculous occurred. Without the chain, Benji began to change right before their eyes. At first, the changes were subtle, his posture relaxed, his gaze softened. Then, for the first time, Benji cautiously sniffed Caleb's outstretched hand. Not to bite, but to investigate. At that moment, his tail, still low, gave a faint wag. By evening, Benji allowed Caleb to stay close, and within hours, something unbelievable happened. The dog approached Caleb, seeking affection. Benji's walk changed from tense and rigid to soft and almost cat-like. His shoulders relaxed, and his tail rose higher with each passing hour. By the next day, he was a completely different dog, calm, friendly, and eager for human contact. When Caleb sent photos to the Animal Control Service, they couldn't believe it was the same dog. The pictures showed Benji lying peacefully next to a person, letting himself be petted. His eyes no longer held fear or anger, only peace and trust. No special rehabilitation techniques were used, no medications. The only thing that changed in Benji's life was the removal of the chain that had restricted not only his movements, but also his mind for years. This story offered yet another confirmation of what Caleb had been saying for years. Keeping dogs chained is not only inhumane, but also extremely dangerous. Statistics from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention show that chained dogs are nearly 3 times more likely to bite adults and 5 times more likely to bite children. Most importantly, chains rob dogs of the chance to be what they are meant to be, loyal companions to humans. Benji is now on the verge of moving to a new home, with several families already eager to adopt him. Caleb frequently shares Benji's story during his lectures, stressing the need to end the practice of chaining dogs. Often, simply removing the chains, both physical and mental, is all that's needed to save a life and reveal a dog's true character. Whenever I see a chained dog, Caleb remarks, I think of Benji's eyes, once filled with fear and rage, later glowing with gratitude and trust. At that moment, I understood that nothing is impossible when you genuinely want to help. What an incredible story! If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. See you in the next video.